Because of the length of time I have been scrutinized illicitly due to the albatross of a man who I don't know other than by his name, Tony Levin. Um, his slanders and his insane angling at me have gone on for decades, during which time I have been tortured horribly. Many of my tapes do not do the courtesy of any sort of introduction to a newcomer because they're answers to his deranged media angling at me. Let me explain who I am in case there's a newcomer. I'm a 62-year-old man who was tortured as a child. The scars are all over me. Notice the throttling of the neuroplasm in my face. Notice I'm wearing hearing aids from deafness. I also have glaucoma and have been subjected to such brutality that I now suffer Parkinson's. For 12 years, I stared into space in disbelief for the mistreatment that nobody challenged, even the closest peers I had, because they claimed I was making crazy statements. I'll repeat each and every crazy statement that they refer to in context in the course of this talk. So you can see for yourself that they're perfectly reasonable concerns, not crazy statements. But sound mental health, who poisoned me in the mouth, by the way. An abscess came up on my lip at a barbecue. And I was given asides indicating that they deliberately did it. Held me outside of school, refusing to allow me to go to school for 12 long years, saying I was a troublemaker who would only fail. When I finally escaped them, an ordeal of homelessness, I managed to somehow get into a community college in Pittsburgh, which I graduated with straight A's, making honors, a fact I duplicated in Tacoma. I was made a member of Psi Beta Psychology, and I was made a member of Phi Theta Kappa. Despite this achievement, which was only possible because a girl with Down syndrome taught me sign language, something the Pittsburgh public school system never did, something Seattle was disinclined to consider a reason for my estrangement and isolation, making up their stories as they did to abuse me and justify keeping me out of school. I accomplished something. Honors department um, projects, contracts with mentors. I studied corrections. I studied the ethics of police law enforcement. I studied African American philosophy. I studied African American history. I studied the art and philosophy of mask making in Africa, Native American, the list goes on and on. I studied for 4 years in the honors departments of 2 community colleges, and the man who had led me to leave for Seattle in the first place was arrested finally on a $6 million museum heist. When I had reported John Schulman to the postal authorities years before his arrest, they chased me off as though I was trying to double cross a distinguished citizen. I was expressing concern. These people framed me as a reckless driver around a school bus at Kelly Elementary School when I was a furious passenger protesting the incident and quit the job over it. The confusion comes from the crowd around Schulman, who tortured me as a child. And then Anthony Levin came on because I had approached one of his friends about looking over some of my poetry in admiration and esteem for his friend's career, and decided that he hated me. He made up the most personal, intimate, cruel, deranged stories about me you could ever possibly imagine. He hired a woman to go undercover to make love to me and become engaged to me for the secret purpose of detonating a neuroplasm they evidently knew was there. You can see it now. If you think that's bad, he was doing it to protect attorneys for the Federal Emergency Management Agency who had me in Washington, D.C. the night that Reagan said he was shot. He came out and waved to me. And they gave me a brochure that read, "There's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes." How crazy is that? How crazy is it that Tony Levin started this horrible story about me that I was to blame for the murder of John Lennon? Horrible story. One that was so pernicious that they got away with trafficking me on Mount Desert Island in a cruel and unusual AIDS experiment they called Two Virgins Pussy Ball. Clocked to the AIDS attack for all the evidence to be seen. And yet I was told they were just fucking with me. What gives these losers, these criminally insane millionaires, these eccentric psychotics, the right to abuse and torture a deaf man who has been in trauma since he was 10 years old due to blindside ritual abuse by men named Ronnie and Casper, just like Reagan and Weinberger in 1974, before anybody knew that Reagan and Weinberger were going to be working together. Who gave them the right to do this? No one looked into it. I asked questions. Who is this man Unruh? That's strange. It's like untrue, only the T is missing. And it's like Murder in the Rue Morgue, only back from the dead. Unruh. Who was in the Secret Service with Reagan that day? Who are these people? Putting movie scripts on my personal effects and then marrying into my family so they can grab them for Fox Media and make up these horrible stories about me. Who are they? When Cersei Kennedy died, her mother wrote to me, and I immediately wrote back. COVID was happening. I was in a high state of alarm, and they poached my letter, the mail services, and delivered it with a freak canoe accident that killed 2 more Kennedys. Who are these people? Can't find anything out because they say I'm making up crazy stories. It's rational. No such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. Are they making up the whole story? Reagan and Lennon had a motive in covering for that script and making it look like Lennon died when he really pulled a fast one. Double fantasy was a Houdini. They had a motive, for one thing, because I had great potential. My father was from Bush's ship in the Navy, and Bush apparently didn't like him. And he went after me. He targeted me. But don't blame Bush for this. Reagan was all over this thing, advocating for the people on Mount Desert Island with his Federal Emergency Management Agency team, and so were Yoko Ono and David Bowie. And when I did research, I found that the script goes back to The Killers, which has the same exact action as what took place in Dealey Plaza and was being made at the same exact time. And furthermore, it goes back to the dawn of cinema, of a counterfeiting ring around D'Annunzio in Fayum, Croatia, who introduced D.W. Griffith to Mussolini. These people made up a zany story that's not true because they needed an alibi for the script about the murder of JFK. And they keep saying that I am after payola about it. While they torture me and murder me, they're so sick with their ideas of 1 cent payola being a symbol that they ripper murdered Shannon Harps outside the clubhouse where they were holding me over a penny demarcation line they say is a war line for the panty lines of the Green Party. That's what they did here in Seattle. And they pursued my letter to Courtney and murdered two Kennedys with its delivery in a hush-hush anonymous phone call. How am I going to protect you when you lie through the teeth to protect the Beatles? Tony Levin is a sick, I am charging that Tony Levin is a sick, greedy assassin who lied about the whole thing, who drove me out of Pittsburgh and deliberately that rendered me a permanent, irreversible invalid with Parkinson's because he is sick with greed and hatred, and he will bite anything that comes near him that he thinks even smells a little bit funny. He is a crazy man, and I don't know who he is except that he poached me. He worked for John Lennon and King Crimson, and he belongs in an insane asylum. He keeps saying over and over and over again that the people who tortured me were my friends. Nothing to do with reality. Nothing to do with the truth. The man is criminally insane.